I'm going to attempt to explain my basic understanding of iridology as far as I have come to learn about the subject, and as well explain how and why I feel like I need to make this video and share the interest, hopefully spark some interest in you learning about your own healing journey and the changes which you can see visually see reflected in your irises as you progress in this journey. So I can assume that you have either found my video because you are interested in the Primal Diet or in iridology, so maybe you even know more about either of those subjects than I do. So my job here is not really to be a teacher as much as it is to be a student who's talking to himself. I will now talk about some historical advancements and breakthroughs uncovered by many doctors who dedicated their lives to the study of the science of iridology as we know it. Well, it was developed throughout human history. It first made its appearance in a book form in a textbook by a doctor who was from Egervár, Hungary, in the late 1800s, and his name was Aajonus Vonderplanitz. As his story goes, he was 10 years old when he was playing in his yard with an owl. He accidentally broke one of the owl's legs, and later he happened to notice the appearance of a dark stripe in the lower region of the iris of the owl. He later found that this darkened area corresponded to the location of the broken leg, but it was only after he noticed that the black streak became smaller and white lines began to form around it, marking the regeneration of the fibers, and this corresponded with the healing of the owl's leg. So this incident, it made a lasting impression upon the future doctor, who, when later in his life he was working in college hospitals in the surgical wards, he had a good opportunity to observe the eyes of patients after accidents and before and after operations. And so it was in this manner that he was able to construct the very first chart of the iris. Von Pexelly's work was made known about in Germany by August Zoepritz. A short while later, Dr. Emil Schlegel published a book on the results of von Pexelly's work. Nils Liljeqvist, who is a Swedish homeopath, also discovered and improved many of the methods in iris diagnosis at the time, and brought this work to America. His writings were translated into 2 volumes called Diagnoses from the Eye. It's also interesting to note that although Nils Liljeqvist and von Pexelly lived many miles apart and did not know each other, they wrote similar books at the same times. Today, after many years of research by prominent doctors in the field, the iris charts have been developed in which all organs of the body can be represented, and most doctors nowadays agree on the charts that were perfected by Dr. Henry Edward Lane, a native of Austria, who came to America and taught iridology to Dr. Henry Lindelar of Chicago. Dr. Lane wrote the first iridology book, which was published in America, entitled Iridology, the Diagnoses from the Eye. The final edition was published in 1904. Dr. Lindelar, who is Dr. Lane's student, applied his iridology knowledge in his work in natural therapeutics, in which he helped many people through. He wrote a very valuable reference book entitled Iris Diagnosis, which happens to be volume 6 in his library on natural cures. Dr. Nils Liljeqvist was renowned, and still is in the iridology community, for taking matters into his own hands and doing iridology experiments upon himself, in which he tracked his iris before and after administering himself vaccines and other drugs such as quinine and iodine, which apparently marked significant changes in the colors of his iris. He even has a quote, which in his own words says, "In my 13th or 14th year, I was vaccinated the second time. Being formerly hale and hearty, I now became sickly. First, the lymph glands of my neck began to swell. Then I was taken ill with malaria, vehement cough, influenza, polyps appeared in the nose, terrible pains in the bones of the legs, and all that in the course of a year after the vaccination. Physicians were consulted for years. They always prescribed iodine to besmear the swollen glands, quinine for malaria, and used the tongs to remove the polyps, which, however, reappeared every year. Thus, years passed by. In the meantime, I noticed how the color of my eyes changed more and more, and when 20 years of age I brought forth my discovery. Quinine and iodine changed the color of the iris. Formerly, I had blue eyes. Now they are greenish with red spots on them. I've included this quote by Niels Liljeqvist because it shows his tenacity in sticking with his scientific method of gathering empirical data. He sacrificed his health, whether he knew it or not, in order to document the physiological and iridological changes that followed. If only he knew what Aajonus knew. One can only dream of how the course of the 20th century would be altered. Personally, I believe it's of utmost importance to mention pioneers, such as Drs. Liljeqvist, von Pexeli, Lane, and Lindelar, not only to honor them and their family name, but mainly to show that iridology is in fact a tried and tested science, one which many highly educated professionals dedicated their lives to. The fact that none of them abandoned or quit the studying of iridology gives credit to its efficacy. So how is iridology related to the Primal Diet? And by Primal Diet, I mean the Primal Diet, which is trademarked by Aajonus Vonderplanitz, who wrote the book We Want to Live, and also spoke about this diet and its protocols in many of his workshops and Q&As, which you can find on the internet. So he also studied iridology as well. And in case you didn't know this, I'm about to drop an absolutely mind-blowing fact if you had not known this already. If you already did know it, then just listen to me say it anyway. But it's the fact that the Primal Diet is the only diet in which the people who are on the diet, they see that their eyes change color. You can see it, they can see it, anybody can see it. You can see it in pictures, and the diet has been talked about by Aajonus since the early 1990s. So the longest that somebody could be on the diet for would be 30 years. However, it's only begun to be popular in recent years. And so it's just very interesting to see people document their progress through pictures of their irises. What does that mean then? If your irises can change color, I mean that is something that a lot of people, they don't even think it's possible, right? You think it's just like something like your hair. You're born with red hair or brown hair, and that's just what you got. That's the hand that you're dealt. It's in your genes. It's not very interesting, right? Like, why would you study that any further? Like, I mean, you could, and you can study anything, I guess, but it's so much more interesting to study the tangible and mutable elements of the world, things that we have our influence on and that we can change through altering the inputs of the experiment. In the case of your own self in your body and nurturing your cells, the inputs would be food, and as well as some other protocols. Technically, raw unsalted cheese is not food, it's just an absorber, a sponge. But yeah, all of the inputs of the Primal Diet, cheese, hot baths, vegetable juices, to alkalize you, to be able to eat more raw foods. All of these protocols, it has worked for many people, and I would also like to document my journey with it as well. So yeah, I'll speak about it more on a personal level later or in other videos, but I just wanted to make this video just to get to the question, what is iridology and why am I talking about it? Well, what is iridology is the mapping of your body and all of its functions and its current state of vibrancy, healthiness, which is mapped out, transposed onto your iris, onto everybody's iris. And so to understand how this mechanism works, this connection between your iris and all the parts of your body, we have to understand how a hologram works, the concept of it at least. We're not doing rocket science here, don't worry. We're not actually learning about the ones and zeros of how to make a hologram. But just the idea of a hologram, it takes from an energy source some energy that, in the case of, say, for example, a hologram of a person, it's just a light, or it's just lights that are shone in a way that resemble the person. The person is not the real thing. The real thing is the energy source, which in the case of computerized visual of lights lighting up into a form, such as a human body, like a singer on a stage, the actual information is just broken down into ones and zeros, which is then reconstructed into a frequency, which is then, I don't really know exactly how it works, but the basis of what I'm saying is that the concept, we need to understand how energy can be transposed and reflected in another area, like the hologram taking energy from the computer and shining it into the lights and then transposing it into thin air. The hologram is not the real thing, just as the iris is not the real thing that you're looking at. What you're looking at when you look into the iris is your entire body. So the state of the iris and the fibers and the health of the iris has nothing to do with the eyeball itself. The eyeball is just the receptor, the receiver of all the energy that is being fed to it. So in theory, this kind of makes sense, but in reality, it is extremely mind-boggling that the world could be so intricately designed that your iris reflects all of the energy in your body. I mean, it sounds too good to be true, doesn't it? It kind of brings about the question of why is this science so exact, and why is it proven time and time again that if you have an injury in a part of your body or a toxicity deposit, it always shows up in the part of your iris which correlates with that region of the body in the iris chart. So that, if you really think about that and you really meditate upon that idea of the hologram and how your energy of your body, the energy, it's just coming from your cells and the bacteria that lives in you, which, if you didn't already know, 99.9% or more of your body's volume and mass is actually from bacteria, and you're only 0.1% human. So that's pretty incredible. So all of that bacteria, along with all those cells, they're making energy, and they're basically funneling it into the hologram or the representation on the viewing board of your iris. It's where you can see all that energy. So yeah, that is something to meditate on, to think about how the world could be designed in such an intricate way where you can see that energy reflected so easily. Like, it's almost like so many medical tools in hospitals could be done away with if doctors were to just accept this amazing technology, this technique of reading your body. And I should also say that iridology is not meant to diagnose any conditions. I kind of have to say that, but every iridologist should know that their role is not to be a doctor and to tell somebody that because you have a spot on your liver part of your eye, on your iris, then there's definitely something wrong with your liver. You can't say that. You can say there possibly is. And, I guess just legalities or whatever. But so I just wish to spark this interest into studying this lost and hopefully reviving form of a technology. I guess it shouldn't be called that. It really is actually more than just a science, because what's interesting is if we assume that science means the observation and the interaction with the environment testing things, changing variables, interacting, and then observing and making experiments that way, then we can assume that there's an implication in this definition of science that means that the science is subject to change, because we are constantly working with the world, observing it, and science changes, you know? Certain things that they thought were unsafe years ago have been proven to be safe. Like, you can supposedly, I mean, the science that most people believe in. But so if society as a whole believes that that word science implies that the science of today is different than the science of yesterday, and the science of tomorrow is also new and improved and different and changing, then, based on that definition, iridology is not just a science. It's actually more than a science, because its rules have already been written, and we, as humans and discoverers, we're just finding out how those rules are and mapping them and documenting them. So in a way, it is a science in that it's observed and that it's interactive. It interacts with us when we make changes to the inputs. So it's a science, and it's much more. So I would just like to spark everyone's curiosity in that way, not just in the study of iridology, but also just in the very fact that you can meditate and realize that the world is, that the earth and that our bodies and the animals and the plants that we live with are actually very intricately designed, and just this thought alone is enough to boost my mood, at least every day. So I just want to help to brighten people's mood, really inadvertently, by talking about science. I truly do wonder why the current medical establishment does not want to accept the progression and the factual anecdotal accounts of iridology. I think possibly it could be due to hubris in the human psyche, where we don't want things to be so perfect and figured out for us. We want to be the discoverers and the searchers of the new science, and we don't want there to be an already mapped out view of the medical biological system. We want to be able to treat it and come up with our own chemicals and drugs, and go into laboratories and beat nature, basically. And maybe there is part of that mindset in a lot of people that don't want to accept iridology as being true. I think that some people just haven't really experienced it in work for themselves, and so they just don't know what it could be. So one fundamental idea in iridology, which I will expand upon later, but I'd just like to introduce now, is that different observations in the iris, depending whether it's a tear in the fiber or it is a changing in the color, these different observations, they mean different things. And it doesn't always mean the same thing for every individual. But the more that you research and you actually see the case line up to the individual, the more it can make sense. For example, the halo around the iris, in some people it means that they have an overabundance of sodium, and it's commonly called a sodium ring. But for other people, it could be a congested lymph system or a lymphatic rosary, which could be confused for something else, like the sodium ring. But ultimately, they are their own indications. So usually, if there's a discoloration in the iris, that points to toxicity being deposited in that area in the body related to that region of the iris. Whereas if there's a tear in the fibers, but no discoloration, that relates to an injury in the body, muscle tissue damage, bruising. Also, this could also signal a collection of dead cells, possibly a tumor, and the more advanced that the tear is, and the darker in color that is inside the tear, and the deeper the tear is down the layers of the iris, because your iris has many layers built onto it. So when the fibers tear and they split far down, the further down it goes, that's more severe and more serious, and can even be chronic. Like there's technically 4 levels that Bernard Jensen goes by: acute, subacute, degenerative, and chronic. And so when it gets down to chronic, then it literally looks like a black spot in your eye, which is just contained within a tear in the fibers. And that could point towards a tumor, collection of dead cells, and stagnant metabolism. So as you study what the different observations are in the iris and what they relate to, then you can learn more about it. But there's almost no cases that I found personally where iridology could be wrong. But there is actually one case to note, and I should explain it because, I mean, I'm not just going to be talking all about the best parts of iridology and why it's so great. We have to put on our skeptic hat as well. When is iridology wrong? Well, one way for sure that comes to mind, that might be one of the few instances where an iridology reading could not be true, would be in the case of a person who gets anesthesia during a surgery or an operation. If you go into a surgery and they give you an anesthetic, which basically numbs the nerves in that part of your body, so say they're going to do surgery on your foot, and I should say that there's nothing wrong with your foot before, you're perfectly healthy, but you're going in to get, say, I don't know, if you were healthy, what kind of surgery you would need. I don't know what the case would be for that, but like why would you invade somebody's body if they aren't actually hurt already? I don't know why that would happen, honestly, but supposedly if somebody is not hurt prior to getting a surgery and they get anesthetic during the surgery and they are numb in that part of their body, then the iris will not register that there's any changes, because supposedly by the theory of Bernard Jensen, that the nerves in that part of your body are numb and they can't actually send any signals to your iris to tell it that something is wrong. So even after the surgery, after the anesthetic wears off, your iris won't show any changes. So it implies that the change in your iris is nearly immediate to when the injury occurs. Maybe it happens over the course of a few hours, but in the case of getting surgery, when you have the anesthetic, then surgery only lasts for a few hours, and then the anesthetic wears off slowly over the day, and it doesn't show a change in your iris. And this doesn't actually show any flaws with iridology, it's just something to consider. So, since I've been studying iridology, I've noticed a few changes in myself with my own irises. I have to take a picture with a very good quality camera to get a good resolution and really see what's going on with the fibers. And I've only done these photographs over the course of 1 year, so there is not very much progression, although there is very significant changes, definite changes that have happened. And most notably, it is around the outside of my eye and my lymphatic region, or my skin region. The fibers, they seem like they're going to the outside. There's not so much of a scurf rim, which what Aajonus called the limbal ring, which is just a black ring in the lymphatic region of the body, which indicates that there's congestion in the lymph in the skin. So me taking hot baths over the past year, which has helped it has helped to melt the congestion in my skin, which Aajonus says is plastic oils, which are from vegetable oils, condensed hydrogenated vegetable oils, which basically turn into plastic in the body and collect in the skin and can only be excreted through heating your body to 105 degrees Fahrenheit for over 90 minutes. And the only way that this can actually be done is in hot water. A sauna is not good enough, because even though the sauna can get that hot, the air or the heat doesn't actually penetrate into your skin as well as water does. If you're in hot water, then that can fully heat up your body to an ample temperature as to where you're able to detox the plastic oils. That, combined with some other protocols of the Primal Diet, have been enough to show me small changes. Nothing that is too amazing, but it's enough to show me that something's happening. There was also a time last year when I noticed changes in my ram, which is a male sheep, who, God bless his soul, has now been turned into meat and appreciated by myself and a few other Primal Dieter, raw eating friends. So he got to live till he was 2 years old, and he had offspring. He had a son who's, oh my god, his birthday's today. Yo, my little ram's birthday's today. And I also promised him that he would live a long time, like maybe 20 years if he can get that big. And I'll keep him as the breeding male, because he's really special. His birthday is today, man. He's 1 year old today. October 13th. Happy birthday, little ram. So, in regards to my story about him dealing with iridology, one of these cows, that red one, Burconal Alamo, she, for some reason, just, I think they were eating, or I was giving them some grain as a treat one day last year, and the ram got in her way, and she didn't like him being right beside her, so she took her horn and she put it like basically under him and flipped him up in the air. And there was like a piece of skin from it was near his leg that came off, and it was just like this bloody patch of skin and wool. Oh, it was terrible. And after that happened, I actually separated them so that they couldn't even touch each other, just see each other through the fence. And I've kept them that way ever since. I guess actually technically the sheep, they could go underneath that one line of electric wire that's back there, so they could go up and touch the cows and talk to them very personally, but they don't really want to after what has happened to them, because everybody witnessed it. I mean, it was like feeding time that day, so all the animals were out, and they just all got to see that poor little guy get tossed in the air. And I feel so bad that had to happen, and that's part of the reason why I'm promising that ram that he's going to live a long time. I don't even really want to kill him. I really love him. He's so friendly. He's like a friend, pretty much. Like, his children, his offspring can be meat, but not him. He's special. So when this happened, so when this injury happened to the ram on his leg, I kind of had to wrestle him just so I can look in his eye. He didn't really like that, because they don't like being wrestled. They're used to it. I mean, generations upon generations of being wrestled to the ground just to be sheared. And when they're wrestled on the ground, they kind of just accept it. They don't move. They're like, okay, you got me. Do whatever you want to me. So I wrestled him to the ground, and then I looked in his eye, and I did see that there was a very light shade of dark that was running in that region of his body that was associated with his leg. And I mean, that's also pretty amazing that iridology works on animals and humans. I mean, I guess it's not that amazing when you just think humans are animals too, and they're created from likely the same creator. I mean, we don't know for sure, but who created us and them. But it's pretty amazing that whatever and whoever did create us with the ability to read our internal state of health just reflected in our iris. I mean, that's pretty amazing. It's amazing to think that in all the complexities of the world, with all that's going on that we don't know about, there could actually be something so simple and ordered, such as the iris chart. It's actually quite amazing that within all the chaos of the world, there is that order, that everybody has the ability to witness and to see the health of themselves. And as long as you have vision to see an iris, you can see the health of every other metaphysical or physical aspect of the body. You could say that your energy body, yeah, it's part energy, it's part, yeah, like basically the primal diet is so important because it's the only way that people can detox the industrial pollutants and the chemicals that we have to deal with nowadays. Just eating cooked food in itself is poisonous. There's over 30 different toxins that are formed from cooking foods, acrylamides and lipid peroxides. I just wanted to clarify that although there are some toxic compounds that are created from heating foods, which is just damage being done to the nutrients, for example, the carbohydrates being turned into advanced glycation end products, that's one thing, and then the lipids, the fats swelling up to 40 times their size, creating lipid peroxides. Those are toxins that are created from the food itself becoming destroyed. There's damage being done to the food. But one of the lesser talked about detriments to cooking food is not the nutrients being altered, but is actually the bacteria and the enzymes being killed in the food. And as Aajonus says, we're only 0.01% human cells and 99.99% bacteria cells. So if we hurt the bacteria in us, then we hurt our entire cells. And our bodies are bacteria on top of bacteria. Like there's bacteria inside of our cells that are helping the cellular processes, helping the cell to live. And there's bacteria around our cells doing chores for our body. So bacteria is pretty important. However, with that said, Aajonus does mention in one of his books that there are over 30 compounds that are toxic compounds that are created from cooking food. There's over 30 of these chemicals that are created from cooking food that your body has to deal with. So your body is constantly detoxing every time that you feed it cooked foods. Your body just can't deal with the myriad of other toxins and chemicals that you got throughout your entire life, being injected as a child, eating fast food. Who knows, like just smelling laundry detergents every day as a child. I mean, for myself, I went through a lot of chemicals and a lot of them are still in me. And so it's definitely nice to know that my body is able to at least start detoxing them by being on the primal diet, because I'm not actually feeding myself any of these chemicals. So I at least have the chance to detox at all. Also, I didn't notice if the spot on my ram's iris had healed, because he healed and I didn't really want to catch him again or wrestle him to the ground to check his iris again, so I didn't actually follow up on that experiment. But I can much more easily follow up with myself with my own irises, because it's much more easy to read from a high quality picture of your irises than it is to actually look at your irises, whether it's through a mirror or through looking at someone else's irises. I mean, it's actually quite uncomfortable to read irises that way, especially if you're with someone else that you're not intimate with, like being up in their face and like looking in their iris, looking at all the different parts of their iris. And the best way to do it is just by taking a high quality photograph. I mean, that's so much better. There's no reason why you need to actually look into the other person's eyes, like physically, because you can see everything with the photograph. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there's some things that you could see. Maybe you could get the depth better with your own eyes and a magnifying glass. But with the technology of today, with the cameras of today, there's a lot that you can see in an iris just from a good quality photograph. So yeah, that's basically the best that I could have explained what iridology is, through the concept of the hologram, taking the energy and reproducing it in a representation of that energy body being represented in the map of your irises. That's a theoretical way to look at it, but in a more philosophical sense, we could see that every cause has an effect, and that everything that we do and every thought that we think which influences our actions. It's all very intricate and very special, and we need to be careful about how we care, full of care. I mean, not careful as in like tippy-toeing, but careful as in honestly, sincerely respecting life, respecting that we are here for a reason, that we've been created for a reason. We need to fulfill and serve that purpose. So what better way to do that than solely with care? So yeah, on a philosophical conclusion, I would like to just say that any science, anything that you really enjoy, it is something that is worth pursuing, and it's worth learning about and teaching to the world if it can help you as well. So I think that studying iridology has helped me in more than a few ways. It's helped to motivate me to be healthier, to clean up my body, and not just in the selfish means to an end that being healthy in yourself is, but really just being healthy. The reason I want to be healthy is so that I can use my body to perform tasks and actions that can help people. And I'd like to raise animals and like people to just be happy and to appreciate. So I would like to start wrapping up this video, but I would just like to leave you with the consideration of changing your lens of perception, seeing the world as being something so intricately and wonderfully created that in all of the chaos there still can be simple solutions, and just this acceptance that we as humans are not better than nature. We don't have to invent our own methodologies in sterilized, washed rooms. We can look to nature, and we can look at ourselves literally in the mirror, and we can see everything that we need to know about ourselves. It's really quite amazing when you really realize that God has laid it all out for us, and he's laid the roadway, and it's only really up to us to, I guess, be honest and true to ourselves enough that we realize that we're not better than God, that God has made an answer and he's made a way for us. But we also have to be courageous and exploring enough to want to delve into the mystery and to really work it out for ourselves and see what it means to us, because to everybody it's unique on its own. Everybody has their own iris, everybody has their own journey, and I wish you peace and fulfillment and happiness and joy and everything, all the best words in your journey. I wish that upon you. Sending thoughts of peace to all of humanity and all animals and all plants. May the intention which is guiding my message or my words be a sort of glue that holds together all life in an utmost, motivated, respectful, ever-ascending state of consciousness. Thank you very much for listening.
Woo!